Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into a story that literally shook the foundations of global sports. Today, we're looking back at the summer of 2026, which was the exact moment global football governance basically almost tore itself apart over a multi-billion-dollar corporate proposition. And look, this wasn't just some minor disagreement over a rule change, right? This was a fundamental, all-out battle for the very soul of the world's most popular sport. The soul and governance of football are not assets to trade. None of us are the owners of football. It is not FIFA's to sell. That is a direct quote from UEFA on July 28, 2026, and it perfectly captures the absolute fury that erupted across the sport. But, to truly grasp why a financial pitch sparked such a massive existential crisis, we have to rewind the clock a bit. We need to see exactly how the sport reached this dramatic breaking point. Section 1. The 8-year power struggle. So before we even get to the billions of dollars on the table, we really need to understand the foundational conflict of this whole story. It's essentially a bitter, years-long Cold War between two men with wildly different visions for the future of football. On one side, you have Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, and on the other, Alexander Ceferin, the president of UEFA. What's actually kind of fascinating here is that both men took power in the exact same year, 2016, and they even used to work together. But their philosophies, they literally couldn't be more opposed. Infantino's vision is all about aggressive global expansion, commercial monetization, and redistributing wealth to developing football nations. Ceferin, though, views all these aggressive commercial moves as a direct existential threat. He's firmly positioned himself as the defender of the traditional European nonprofit model. He advocates for sporting merit and, crucially, for protecting the physical limits of the players by keeping the match calendar from completely overflowing. And this rivalry didn't just happen overnight. It was a constantly escalating timeline of flashpoints. Ceferin fiercely opposed FIFA's expanded 32-team Club World Cup because he argued it completely exhausted the players. They clashed over the heavy commercialization of the 2026 World Cup, things like those mandatory hydration breaks that critics argued were really just an excuse for TV commercials, and the introduction of Super Bowl-style halftime shows. Ceferin also heavily balked at Infantino's idea to expand the World Cup to 64 teams. And then, of course, there was the political friction. Tensions actually flared up publicly when Infantino arrived 2 hours late to a FIFA Congress because he was on a diplomatic tour in the Middle East with Donald Trump, which actually prompted Ceferin to lead a walkout. So the $20 billion proposal we're about to discuss, it definitely didn't happen in a vacuum. It was the explosive climax of an 8-year ideological proxy war. Moving right along to Section 2, the $20 billion pitch. Okay, to really understand these massive financial stakes, we have to strip away all the PR rhetoric and look at the actual corporate mechanism that was being proposed. It was called FIFA Forward Enterprise, or FFE. FFE was designed to be this dedicated commercial subsidiary that would take over all of FIFA's most valuable assets. We're talking broadcasting, sponsorship, ticketing, and licensing rights for mega events like the World Cup. The stated goal for doing this? To attract long-term private investment that could then be channeled directly into global football development. $20 billion. That was the staggering equity valuation of this new subsidiary. It's a number so massive, so unprecedented, that it completely altered the landscape of sports governance literally the second it was leaked to the press. Now, to make this happen, FIFA wasn't proposing selling off the whole sport outright. The plan was that they would retain an 80% majority stake. The remaining 20% minority stake would be sold off to a private investor group. This specific group was reportedly led by Josh Kushner's Thrive Eternal Fund, and the whole deal was being advised by JP Morgan. Selling just that 20% piece of the pie would immediately raise an estimated $4.2 billion in upfront capital for FIFA. So how exactly do you convince the world to just go along with a massive change like this? Well, you dangle an absolutely massive financial carrot. The pitch to FIFA's 211 member associations was incredible. Approve this deal and your federation gets $20 million in upfront funding, which could eventually scale all the way up to $40 million. But right alongside this pitch came some highly controversial rumors published by The Times. Reports surfaced that part of this whole corporate restructuring might include a future role for Gianni Infantino as an NFL-style commissioner of FIFA once his presidency ended in 2031. And the kicker? Potentially with a massive compensation package mirroring Roger Goodell's $64 million salary. Now, Infantino firmly denied these rumors, but the optics alone sent shockwaves through the sport. It raised massive concerns for fans about exactly whose interests would be prioritized when the world's biggest tournament was being run like a corporate franchise. Section 3, the boycott pret. The way this whole thing collapsed happened with sheer, staggering speed. We're looking at a window of just under 4 days for the whole shebang. On July 28th, the Times breaks the story, forcing FIFA to formally announce the plan. The very next day, major confederations like CONCACAF in North America and the AFC in Asia start pushing back, demanding much more transparency. Then, on July 30, we see the nuclear option. UEFA's 55 members unanimously threaten to boycott all future World Cups if the plan proceeds. By July 31, realizing the sheer, undeniable scale of the resistance, Infantino officially withdraws the proposal. And the backlash wasn't just coming from football executives. It got fiercely political very quickly. UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham argued, football does not belong to investors. It belongs to the people who fill the stands. Selling a stake in the competition would mean selling out the tournament. This quote perfectly encapsulates that widespread European fear of hyper-commercialization. To them, the World Cup isn't just a product to be optimized by Wall Street, something that could fundamentally alter fan access broadcasting rights and lead to skyrocketing ticket prices. To them, it's a cultural heritage.
But, and this is absolutely crucial, we have to balance this narrative and look at the other side. For developing federations in Africa, Asia, and Oceania, this wasn't about selling out at all. As Saeed Ali Said Athaman of the Comoros FA pointed out, it guaranteed $20 million meant new pitches, training facilities, and youth academies. We're talking life-changing infrastructure money. Federations like Indonesia and Comoros warmly welcome the idea, which really highlights a massive, very real economic divide within global football.
Section 4. The sudden collapse. So how exactly does a corporate maneuver of this massive magnitude fail so incredibly fast? Well, according to reports, it all started with secret talks at the famous Sun Valley conference between private equity figures and Infantino. After that, things accelerated wildly. There was a rushed midnight meeting at the Waldorf Astoria in New York on the very eve of the World Cup final, where FIFA's management board was reportedly given just hours to approve the entire framework. Because so many key stakeholders, like the regional confederation heads, were kept completely in the dark, the details leaked to the press. This forced a premature public announcement before any real consensus could be built, ultimately dooming the project and leading to a complete retraction just to keep FIFA from fracturing. But even with the FFE proposal officially dead in the water, the shockwaves were still tearing through FIFA's halls. The collateral damage was severe. FIFA's chief operating officer, Kevin Lamore, was unceremoniously sacked after he publicly stated that staff had been basically deceived by the plan. Simultaneously, a totally separate, quieter plan to commercialize the Under-15 World Cup by hosting it at Walt Disney World and securing private investment was quietly scrapped. And perhaps most seriously of all, the U.S. House Judiciary Committee renewed its scrutiny and launched a full investigation into FIFA's governance and political ties. The fallout was very, very real. Which brings us to Section 5, a divided football world. Because what we are left with today is essentially a civil war in sports governance. It's totally fractured. On one side, you have federations demanding immediate change. Following the collapse of the deal, European heavyweights like the FA in England, alongside Norway, Finland, Wales, and even New Zealand in Oceania, officially withdrew their support for Infantino's upcoming re-election. They cited a total loss of trust and demanded serious governance reform. But on the exact opposite side, you see a formidable wall of support. The Confederation of African Football, massive federations like Argentina and Mexico, alongside Qatar, the UAE, and Indonesia, have formally doubled down on their support for Infantino, praising his leadership and his commitment to funding developing nations. And honestly, that leaves us with one incredibly profound question. Who really owns the future of world football? The 2026 FIFA crisis wasn't just some squabble over a corporate subsidiary. It exposed a massive, unresolved tension at the very heart of the game. How does the sport balance protecting its historic traditions and sporting merit against the undeniable drive to monetize its global future and properly fund the developing world? The FFU proposal may be dead, but the ideological war it ignited is far from over. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.